Hi, everyone. I'm Angel Borrelli, and welcome to Angel Borrelli Pitching and Season 12, Episode 2 of The Fix, a podcast dedicated to teaching and protecting our baseball pitchers. Joining me today to talk about velocity, injuries, and everything in between is my favorite catcher and co-host, Jacob Courtney. Welcome back, Jacob.
Thanks for having me on, Angel. I'm really excited to be back, be talking to you, be sharing my ideas and my thoughts with everyone who's listening.
Yeah, and it's a perfect episode to have you back for, because I know you're going to have a lot of things to say about today's topic. So let's go ahead and dive in. So everyone, on the last episode, we discussed the MLB injury report and their conclusion that pitchers throwing with velocity, max velocity, was the cause of the increase in elbow injuries, and that they were going to get to work on some solutions to that problem. And I became very hesitant at that point and scared, because my brain kept saying the fruit of the poison tree, the fruit of the poison tree. If they think it's velocity, then what kind of solution are they going to come up with? Because I don't think the problem is velocity. So I was concerned. And then a few weeks ago, Dr. Glenn Fleissig appeared on MLB Now and shared their first out of the gate solution to the problem. And in summary, here is what he said. And by the way, if anyone didn't hear that and you're interested in hearing and seeing it, just email me at angel@gymscience.com and I'll send you the link and you'll be able to actually see the whole thing. It's about a 10-minute long thing. So anyway, so everyone hang on to their seats. So they were trying to come up with a solution to make it safer for baseball pitchers. And of course, they're trying to save the pitcher's elbow. The elbow is their main concern because of the increase in injuries. So they decided to do some research on the idea of using not just a ball that has a bigger circumference, but a heavier ball. And they went with a 6-ounce ball, which is 1 ounce heavier than a baseball. Baseball's anywhere from 5 ounces to 5 1/4, and this was a 6-ounce ball, and it was 5% larger than the other ball. And they researched, they got some pitchers in there, they had them throw some pitches, and what they found is that the velocity went down, the arm speed went down, and the torque on the elbow, meaning the kind of force that we don't want on the elbow, therefore the ligament, was all reduced. So they were recommending and thinking that this was going to be a way to keep pitchers from throwing hard. He also said that he didn't think it would be possible for a pitcher to ever throw that 6-ounce ball as hard. And now, he's a scientist. I'm a scientist. We can, when we do research and when I read research, he does research. There's certain things that have to be done. He in no way was saying this research was fine tuned and it was ready to go. This was their first experiment. In fact, they brought on Al Leiter, who was a pitcher, and Al said, "Hey, how many pitches did they throw? How long have they done this?" Because he was on the same track I was on, which was, wait a minute, you have pitchers come in, they asked him, "Do you think the pitchers could feel the difference?" I know they felt the difference. A pitcher can feel, a pitcher is sensitive. His nervous system and his fingers know exactly. I mean, they can tell if there's a little speck on the ball or if there's a little seam that's off. So he's aware that, yes, they haven't thrown it. They didn't practice a lot with it. It was just the one experience, but this is what they found, so that it's intriguing. And this was going to be their original recommendation to the MLB about how to prevent injuries. So, did I leave out any details on some of the things they said? It was blind. It was randomized. What was there anything else in the report, Jacob, that I found I forgot?
No, I think you summed everything up, but I just want to say they mentioned using high level college pitchers and minor league pitchers, I believe.
Yes, exactly. So let's dive in piece by piece. Initial reactions. First of all, my initial reaction was my eyes got huge, my mouth fell open, And I almost started laughing like this, like, what? And then my brain saw my pitchers that throw a split finger. How the heck are they going to do that? Then I saw my pitchers that throw a knuckle curve. How are they going to do that? We're talking about a circumference that's bigger. Now, the numbers don't mean a lot. Oh, 5% this, a little bit of this. He showed two balls. He had the real baseball, and then he had the 6-ounce ball that's the same size as a regular baseball, but different weight. And then they had the bigger ball and bigger weight. Oh my God, to see it. So my brain was going, you're kidding me, right? And then the next thing I thought was, could Jacob catch with the glove he's got that size ball? Jacob, could you?
It would definitely feel a lot weirder. 1 ounce and 5% of the ball being bigger makes a difference.
Did you see you saw the ball, right?
I saw the video.
Didn't it look way huge?
It looked like I don't know. It just looked interesting. It looked weird. I wasn't used to seeing a baseball that looked like that, and it looked weird in his hand. That was the thing that threw me off because
Yes,
it's not like a normal human holding a normal baseball.
yes, it was really for anybody who's interested in seeing this, don't hesitate to write me for the link. But yes, so my initial reaction, it was I just I couldn't believe it. And then my next reaction was scared. I'm like, "Oh no. What is the deal with being so afraid to once again not even look at the idea that the solution has to first come from a place of looking at how pitchers are throwing the ball, not coming up with some external solution, meaning let's do something on the outside to tie their hands so that these people who aren't really humans, they're like machines, won't throw hard. This is like the idea of thinking you can develop velocity by going from the outside in. I thought it was like a weird solution because to me, again, there's this blind spot. And nowhere in the first article or in this, nobody is talking at all about the fact that pitchers are getting hurt because of a lot of things they're doing to try to throw hard because throwing hard is part of their job. And they're also getting hurt because in the process of trying to do some of these crazy things, and then also just in the process of being a pitcher, you get out of whack. And if your shoulder and elbow do one thing that's weird, you can get injured. So nobody is talking about developing a system to where we can look at pitchers to see, do they have risk factors in terms of their pitching motion so that we can get ahead of the issue. So those were some of my initial reactions. And then reading between the lines, I'm like, wait a second. 6-ounce ball, arm speed is down, velocity's down. So all these guys that are throwing 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-ounce balls. They're doing crazy drills that force their arm. I've seen drills and you don't have normal mechanics. The arm pulls through differently. With a ball that is slowing the arm down on normal mechanics, these guys are working hard to throw a heavier ball hard. Didn't he just, in what he said, make a case for why throwing a weighted ball is a bad idea? So there I was reading between the lines on that, and then also seeing once again that the methods that pitchers used should be carefully scrutinized. I mean, Jacob, I was thinking if you've got a problem, I mean, if you have a problem with your car, let's say it's leaking oil, don't you want the mechanic to say, well, this is what we got to do. We're going to change this. We're going to change this thing here, and then we're going to do this, and your car will be fine. You want to hear that. You don't want to hear, oh, you need to get a new car. You know, so I'm like, this felt so crazy to me in so many ways, and I was in shock that this was actually being presented. Tell me what you thought when you heard the whole thing.
I read the first article that you talked about, and I read about how velocity and the advancement of stuff was hurting pitchers. And then I saw that they were going to make a solution. And this just blew my mind that this was their number one solution that they came up with. I think that it's not just changing pitching, but it changes the whole game of baseball. But it's not, I don't believe it's going to help pitching. I think that even if there's a heavier ball, people are still going to try to throw that ball as hard as they can. And just making the ball heavier isn't going to stop someone from trying to throw as hard as they can. So I believe, like you said, the problem is within. It's not an external factor. It needs to be mechanics, and then the pitchers need to know their body. And I think mechanics is the only way to look at that.
Yes, and you said something important, really important, and it has to do with the word adaptation. So I, as you know, my background is as a strength coach and Olympic weightlifting coach. So there's two moves in Olympic weightlifting. Cleans and snatches. Snatches is the fastest. This is when you see the guy pick up the bar from the floor, slides it up the front of his body and hoists it right over his head. There's no stopping. It's not like a clean and jerk where he cleans it to his shoulders. He gets it to his shoulders, then he lifts it up over his head. The idea of Olympic weightlifting is that you get a weight from the floor over your head as fast as possible. And you have two different types of moves to do it. When you teach somebody, so if somebody's using 75% of what they could lift for one weight on a snatch, it's going pretty fast. It's sort of like throwing a lighter baseball. But when they get close to their weight, that thing is going to go slower, but it still gets up there. And in the competition, it's not how fast you get it up there; it's that you get it up there. But here's what happens, and here's the definition of power. Power is strength plus speed. So the guy who's training and getting the bar up slower, he's got to move it correctly, and it has to be systematic, and it has to have some juice flowing through it. You can't stall. But just saying, if somebody's lifting something heavier and it makes your body go slower, the fact that he got it up over his head, that guy is exuding more power than the guy who gets it up faster, but he didn't have to use as much force. Okay. So he's developing motor units and a nervous system to handle that extra weight. So before you know it, that heavier weight is moving just as fast. And guess what that means? He's able to add more weight. And the next thing, he's off in a competition winning. So the body adapts to the weight you're using. And these guys, they're already throwing 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-ounce balls. And, my own opinion why all the injuries are present is that they're using exotic methods, which, this isn't going to be a show about it's right or wrong, but it fatigues the muscles and they don't use them at the right space and time because pitchers don't have 2 days to recover from their weighted ball exercise routine and then pitch their next bullpen before a game. They're doing it before they throw. They're throwing with fatigued muscles. This is the main cause for injuries is muscles being fatigued. And this is something science has shown. So you would think there'd at least be a mention of this fact. So what concerns me is that we've got a weighted ball, we've got an exotic method sort of thing going on. And now this is being introduced as a solution. And I'm just thinking it doesn't make any sense because we're going to be in the same boat because you cannot solve a problem for a human being and his motion by changing some external factor. It's going to always come back on you. But it seems as if they're dead set against looking at mechanics. It's almost like, I mean, when is the last time you heard anybody talking about injuries and saying it's the way the pitcher was throwing that was causing the problem? I mean, it's not even brought up. And so I'm having a little bit of an issue with that. And does that make sense, Jacob?
Yeah, exactly. You just hear that they were throwing too hard, or it was because of their slider, because of these reasons. No one ever talks about it's because of their rotation, their external rotation, or the angle of their arm.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy now. The other reaction I had to all of this was while my brain's going through all this in like a quick millisecond, is I'm completely confused. I said to myself, I am so confused listening to this. So I want to educate everyone on why I'm confused, and I want you to think about this. So in 1995, when I started my graduate studies, Glenn Fleissig was my mentor. Everything I know about the pitching motion started with his research that he did. He did the most fantastic research on pretty much every topic, all biomechanics related. And biomechanics is the quantitative, the numbering part of measuring angles. And they set the guidelines for those of us in science that actually work with the qualitative part, which making sure that angle that he suggested is correct. And then if it's not, knowing how to look in the motion for the cause of that problem and knowing how to put muscles together. My side of science, what I do, brings Glenn's work alive. So everything I know, because I don't speak about anything that I can't prove in science because I can't make stuff up. So for example, this is first thing I want everyone to do some critical thinking on. One of the first articles that I ever read on mechanics, and my job is to connect. So here's an article. They found out that if a pitcher has, let's talk about a right-handed pitcher. If a pitcher has a lack of range of motion in his left hip, this would be a right-handed pitcher, that it causes medial elbow injury. Now, when they do research, they have their ways of doing it. And for it even to be published, it has to make sense. So that means I know that they looked at this enough, they've tracked it for years. There's this correlation. My job as an analytical kinesiologist is to say, why would a pitcher's left hip lack in range of motion to where it would cause a problem with his elbow? Because I'm an expert on the pitching motion from moment one of the first movement till the end. My job is to make that connection. So, after much research and, of course, working with pitchers for 30 years, if a pitcher has problems with his left hip, it's usually because this pitcher steps across his body, meaning his left foot has landed too far to his right. His hips cannot fully rotate through, meaning that leg is not only tight on internal rotation, it has blocked his rotation. And the rotation being blocked means that his shoulder can't come through with the arm in the normal way because the arm gets ahead of the hip and he has to lead with the elbow, which means he has to make a correction with his forearm position. And that fatigues the forearm, and the forearm has to stabilize the fastball. And picture a pitcher doing that 100 times in a game and X number of other times in his bullpen and everything else. And thus you have the relationship between that explains what research and science says. The pitcher who steps across his body is vulnerable to medial elbow pain. For all the pitchers out there that do that, I want you to ask yourself, is this something that knowing that you would consider adjusting? To all the coaches out there, if you watched for this with your pitchers, don't you think it would be awesome to be able to say to that pitcher, listen, we want to help you with possibly landing more correctly, or least case, there's a correlation between the way you're landing and the inside of your elbow. So we need you to tell us if you start feeling anything at all in that elbow, because that means we need to make an adjustment. And the pitcher might say, no, if I'm vulnerable to that, I want to change it. And by the way, making a small adjustment like that always makes the pitcher feel better. And you're not even touching his arm. His arm naturally pulls through because the way he's pulling it through is abnormal. Now, Jacob, don't you think somewhere, somebody, I mean, this is science. I have the research on my sitting on my desk. don't you think the guys who did this research would say, okay, we want to deal with elbow injury. So first, let's assess our. You should first assess your pitchers because we know that this problem in the left hip, which can be caused by stepping over, causes medial elbow problems. This is one of the first things, guys, that you should make sure your pitchers aren't doing. And by the way, it's not an adjustment that ruins their pitch. Their strikes will be even better. Everything will work better. Jacob, do you think that that should be part of the discussion? Do you see why I'm so confused as to the industry that did the research that I follow, that I use to solve problems, aren't using it themselves? Do you get that?
That I understand it completely. I mean, I understand where you're coming from because I mean, as a college baseball player myself, I'm around a lot of pitchers myself as well as you. I'm around a lot of pitching coaches. I see different methods, and when I work with you, I see what you do, and then I don't try to coach myself because I don't have that credentials for that, but I see coaches almost putting their guys in situations like this, like telling them, step across, you might get a little more run on your fastball, or you should drop your arm slot or raise it super high because they're just trying stuff. But no one, because they don't have the background in science, they don't know what that's going to lead to. And then people start throwing harder and harder with these weird arm slots, and then that is the reason that leads to the injury since they're putting themselves in these vulnerable positions because that's what they're told, and that's what they're told is okay.
Exactly. And you know, right now with every coach and every pitcher that's hearing this, I sort of have ruined your party because when you hear something, and this is what motivates me in my work. This is why I don't use exotic methods for velocity. It's why I'm not. I wouldn't say I play it safe. I'm aggressive, but I know what I'm doing. But I don't use methods that could possibly hurt a pitcher because if I'm reading something that says something increases forces, and I know I don't want to increase forces around that kid's elbow, then I can't do it. So, with what I just said, for every pitcher out there, if you find yourself not even wanting to hear this or look at it, or as a coach, now that I've said this, it's something that's going to be tough on you when you look at, especially if you work with high school. And you know, and I'm really talking to high school youth coaches, high school, college, because I don't know where the MLB's at. I don't know what they're going to do. The whole thing sounds crazy to me. But before you get there, guys, before your guys get their coaches, if we could start just being sensitive to this and understanding that this can save an arm, and we save arms one step at a time. I mean, it's not like we have to save the world. You save one arm, one pitcher at a time. But I've just ruined it because by saying this, yes, the ball comes out of nowhere. That's what they say. Wow, the ball comes out of nowhere. The hitter can't see it. Well, you know what? Yes, that's true. But if you are really trying to reduce injuries, or if you are what you consider a developmental coach, you need to know this connection. And at least, as I said, it's just like if you go to the doctor, you want him to say, okay, listen, your blood pressure is right there. It's about to be beyond what is safe, so it's up to you. So if you start to have any symptoms, you need to come and see me. But if you feel okay with the way you are now, just know. I mean, that's what we want to hear in life whenever there's something we're facing. We want to know, well, where are we? Are we safe? You know, are we safe or are we in the danger zone? And as a coach, if you don't either understand how to make the adjustment, you should have people around you that can help you with the pitching motion. You should be looking for coaches that don't just see. And by the way, let me just preface this because, and I say this all the time, when I say a pitcher stepping across his body, That is the symptom of what you see. Yes, that's the flaw. We know that if there's left hip range of motion in the left hip, if it's weird, and if his hips can't pull through, he's going to lead with the elbow. That stresses the forearm. That's what we see happening. The coach you want to work with, the people you want to send your pictures to, is someone who says, okay, I see that. Now, why is he doing that? You can't just say, step over to your left. Because when he comes out of when he lowers his knee, he's doing something with his back leg that is causing the front leg to land too far to the left. The only leg on the ground is his right leg as a righty. If his left leg doesn't land correctly, it's because the right leg didn't position his body correctly, and that foot had to find the ground sooner than it was supposed to. So you have to know where you have to go to the cause. And isn't that cool? Because now you're staying away from the pitcher's arm. You don't have to worry you're going to make a pitcher not as good. You're going to make him better. But guess what? If he's not available to pitch because he's hurt, then he's of no value to you at all. So when you're looking at pitchers and you're looking at problems, this is the cool thing. And so the minimum you can do is to say, hey, you're vulnerable. You're vulnerable. And so that pitcher can watch out for it. Jacob, would you agree, or do you have any evidence of pitchers who pitch with pain, knowing they have pain, and then before you know it, they just can't pitch. They go down the mound, they're pitching in pain X number of appearances, and the next thing they can't pitch at all. Do pitchers not pay attention to things?
No, I think pitchers get caught up in just trying to get out there and do their thing, and they think they'll be okay, and they think they'll be the same pitcher every day when they know that they've been in pain, or they know they haven't thrown a bullpen because they've been in pain the past few weeks, and then they just go throw live ABs, or they go throw in an inner squad in practice, and then after that inner squad they realize, man, I don't think I'm going to be able to throw for 3 weeks because I didn't correct my arm right. And that all starts with the mechanics. It's bad mechanics, it's a bad routine. That's something that I really appreciate with working with you, seeing what you are so strict with your days between pitching and throwing days and a program. And I just don't see that a lot. And I think that's one thing people question. Why are my pitchers so fatigued? Why are we so tired? Well, maybe it's because you threw 100 pitches yesterday and then you're playing catch long toss the next day. And people just don't see that the combination of body fatigue with a bad routine, with exotic training methods, with pretty much anything else we've covered today, bad mechanics, it's just a combination and a recipe for disaster. And everyone wants to just look over all of that and just go straight to velocity or the way I'm snapping my slider or any of those factors that are actually have to do with pitching, which good pitchers do not get hurt from.
Exactly. And coaches, you really have to create an environment. Just like I said, if a pitcher knows that he's vulnerable to something, or if they have to know that they can talk about it and say, hey, this is starting to bother me, or I'm not recovering well, so that the issue is highlighted and that they have the freedom to come and talk about it. But being able to make the connection. And so this is part of my confusion. Science says that if your left hip is jammed up and it gets jammed up from crossing over, you get medial elbow pains. And the only connection to that is that the arm doesn't come through correctly and it does crazy things with the forearm. Now, I want to give you another thing. So I want to stay on this confusion thing so you understand where I'm coming from, because this is the research that I base my business on, and I'm a troubleshooter. I'm supposed to see an injury that can happen before it happens, and that's what my job is, and I'm good at it. And I'm also supposed to create and develop velocity and location without creating injuries, and I do all of it through mechanics. So here's another thing, and you've heard this mentioned because last year they were actually talking about this as a mechanical thing. Glenn Fleissig does biomechanical research. He's one of the most pronounced researchers when it comes to the mechanics of pitching. And we know that the arm at stride foot contact has to be in a particular place. Stride foot contact is when the front foot touches down, not when it's flat, not when it's fully down, when it first makes contact, because the second it makes contact, the next phase, which is called rotation, begins. So you have to know, if you're looking at film, how to isolate that moment. When that moment occurs, the arm has to be in a particular place, up at shoulder height, and the forearm has to be, again, we're talking about righties, has to be rotated to a certain angle. So there's a particular arm, and in research we have the numbers for it. So if I'm talking about it and someone else is talking about it, we all agree on it. Okay. That ball, the reason why that arm has to be there is because, first of all, it's nice and tight in the socket. The ligament is nice and taut. And when the pitcher starts to rotate, everything's good. His arm goes back, his body goes forward. He ends up in the right place at the right time. There are major league pitchers who have suffered repeated injuries, and they keep saying, why is this guy keep getting injured? And there's guys right now, aces, that are out. And when I see them on, they show him pitching, the arm is late. And when you have a late arm, as you're doing that, that means that your body is rotating. Your arm has to make up for a moment that it didn't have because it's off. It's actually not timed correctly. And once again, when the pitcher's body is ready to throw, the arm is slightly behind, which causes the pitcher to either lift the arm up to try to create an extra moment, or he has to swing the shoulder through and lead with the elbow. There are a number of things that flaw causes. And in either case, the arm comes through. And once again, the forearm, which is not coming through correctly, has to rotate again to be in the correct pronated position. And these guys get arm injuries, and the elbow injury is a forearm issue. And having a forearm having to make up for its position because your arm didn't come through correctly. And this all started with you coming out of the glove in a way where your arm wasn't up at the right time. That causes elbow problems. Do you not see why I'm so confused as to why, when they say, why is this guy getting injured? And he returns after surgery and he's doing the same thing. Jacob, can you feel me? Why I'm looking at this going, why are they so hell bent on not mentioning mechanics? It's almost like there's a rule. You can't mention mechanics because nobody is looking at this. Yet in science, this has been correlated. And the organization that's doing this research, I mean, this is where I learned it.
Yeah. I mean, when I first met you, I had to say I thought you were a wizard or something, because you would tell me, oh, I've been watching this pitcher. I think he's going to get hurt and have this exact injury. And Rollin mentioned the same thing on the last podcast, where you've been right. I think he said, like, almost, you're probably batting about 700 to 800 right now on those, because you see the mechanics. You don't see what they do. You don't see if they throw plyo balls. You don't see if they long toss or run a bunch of miles. You just look at their pitching mechanics and you can tell, you know what's going to happen. And it's an easy fix if they just work on it. But no one, like you said, it's almost an unwritten rule that no one wants to talk about that.
Yeah, it's very scary. And I want to just mention one third flaw, because coaches and pitchers, these two things, I'm mentioning the three top things that right now, there's pitchers out on the IL right now in the major leagues. Okay. And of course, I see this in high school and college, but in the major leagues, there's aces that are out right now that have had one of these. And I'll give you one of these things. I saw it. I saw it on the game where they got injured, and I saw it still when they returned. Some of them had to pull themselves out again. So if you have one of these, science has shown that if you do this, you're going to get this. No, this correlates to that. That's what science says. Wouldn't you like to know that? Also, guess what? If you're doing any of these things, your velocity is not going to be there, nor is your location going to be there. And the third thing I want to mention is, If you're doing anything exotic and you're throwing with these flaws, you triple, you triple the risk that you're taking. So to me, the major leagues and teams should have a system where you're looking at a pitcher and you're saying, hey, there's our pitchers. We want to know, just like when they have a physical, hey, this guy has a risk factor. He had an ankle injury 3 years ago. So we got to watch his ankle. We got to watch this. Hey, he does this. So it should be something you're continuing to work on, finding the cause of that in his motion and then working on it, or at least highlighting it so he knows to be aware if that area starts to get sore. Here's the third and final thing I want to mention to everyone. And this thing is something that I've discussed personally. And so this is another thing that makes me crazy. So when the ball gets stuck near the pitcher's ear, so when the pitcher is rotating to face the plate, his forearm is supposed to be moving. So just at the moment when he squared up to the plate, the ball's ready to be thrown. Sometimes when the pitcher's rotating, his forearm falls downward towards the ground for many reasons. And it'll look like the ball is near the ear, near the pitcher's ear. Jacob, am I saying that clearly?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. So at that moment, the pitcher can't throw the ball because if he came forward with the correct shoulder motion, the ball would hit his ear or it would be, a very funny looking throw.
Yes.
So the pitcher knows to make up an extra beat. So he leads with the elbow. He leads with the elbow. He brings the elbow through, and then he ends up throwing the ball from the elbow. And by the way, when he pulls the elbow through, his forearm again loses its correct positioning. He has to reposition the forearm, and then he has to throw it. Now, this pitcher is running the risk of shoulder problems because we know science says this when the elbow is excessively flexed, and that's really what it is. Remember, flexion is when the arm gets shorter. When the ball is near the ear, the forearm is bent down, it's near the ear, the ball's near the ear, the elbow is excessively flexed. It creates a tightness inside the shoulder for rotation. At that moment, when it's tight, the pitcher's supposed to be going into external rotation. He cannot go into external rotation because of his arm position. So he has to do something to release that. Plus, the ball's not ready. So the pitcher's body is making up for this. So he's doing things. Some pitchers just bring the elbow in and all of a sudden the ball's ready to go. So he's leading with the elbow, throwing like a quarterback. Or the pitcher lifts up straight in the air. That brings the arm up. It releases the shoulder, but the pitcher is airmailing the ball. He's got the elbow way higher. You could picture that, right, Jacob?
Mm-hmm. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay. So both of those things, the shoulder being pulled tight like that, and there is a very famous pitcher right now who had this problem last year and the year before, and he is not pitching and was known to be one of the best pitchers. This is what he was doing in the last outing when he got hurt. Now, if someone hasn't been willing to look at him in this way and say, hey, this is what you did in the last outing, let's figure out now. That problem is a problem that occurs when the pitcher is rotating, and there's different reasons for it. But there's movements that cause the arm to fall inward. There's strength skills and there's positioning that causes that. So what we're seeing is, again, the problem, but it's not the cause. But that issue has been a problem for a very famous pitcher, and I see it very frequently, and it's very common. And by the way, the use of balls that aren't the right weight cause the sensory system to be off to where it's very easy to allow gravity to pull that forearm down so that the ball is not ready to be thrown. When you have that issue, you can tear the labrum, you can stress the shoulder and the bicep area. You also can create elbow problems because you have to rotate the forearm. And remember, UCL problems are a forearm issue. The forearm is supposed to protect the UCL. The muscles protect the ligaments. The forearm is one of the main protectors, and it works not only to rotate the ball for its different pitches, but it has to stabilize the wrist through the forearm segment to deliver a fastball that is going to be lined up for location. So that forearm plays a huge role. When that forearm has any extra work, it can get fatigued, and that's one thing we don't want. So these three issues: stride foot contact coming out of the glove problem, ball ending up close to the ear, problem during rotation, and then leading with the elbow because you have no choice because your arm got ahead of your body because your legs crossed up during the stride. Those three are the most common things that relate to elbow injuries and sometimes connected to tight shoulder. So, do you all understand why I'm confused? All of this is research. I didn't make this up, but I can tell you I verified it in the last 30 years that it's true. Because when guys come to me, my arm hurts, this hurts, I had Tommy John. I have to find where in their motion that caused that problem, and we solve it. And my guys, I have 4 or 5 guys right now that all return to play this spring, no problem at all. We fixed it during the winter. So this is why I am confused by the MLB's resistance. Instead of changing the ball, changing this. And by the way, Jacob, what would this do for hitting if the ball was changed? Would you be happy about it as a hitter?
No, I mean, it could possibly be better since, yes, you would be able to see the ball a little bit better. It would be bigger and the pitchers would throw it slower, but you wouldn't be able to hit it as far. It's a heavier baseball, probably a little less spin. It just wouldn't be right to change baseball. Like, I get there's been a lot of rules that have changed in the past, I'd say 10 years of baseball in the major leagues, but changing the physical aspects of the game, what people have been doing for over 100 years, it just doesn't seem right for the hitters or the pitchers, even umpires. Like, there's so many adjustments that are going to have to be made from the majors to T-ball if we change this one rule.
When I heard it, in fact, I haven't heard anything about it since. I mean, usually there's going to be stories about it in all the reports I get. I saw nothing about it. Do you think the major league just went, oh no, we're not doing that? Or do you think they would actually consider it? Does it sound totally insane to you?
I think that they would consider it, but I think that it will never become a real thing in the major leagues because it is insane. It is insane to change the whole aspect. It's almost like them wanting to move the mounds back by 3 to 4 feet or however much it was. It's just you're changing the whole baseball field. You're changing the baseball itself. It just doesn't seem right.
Yeah. And I also think a pitcher transitioning. I mean, how many this would only be good for pitchers who are just coming into the sport, meaning they're 6 years old. Do you
Yeah,
know what I mean? I mean,
exactly.
just the stress on the forearm and fingers in the change. That's why even having conversation, it feels like wasted time to me. That's why I don't understand everything. But if you're going to consider this, it should be last on the list. And to me, developing a system to assess the vulnerabilities of all your pitchers, having someone teach you how to make the connections between some pitching motion issues and the vulnerabilities that they have, so your pitchers can be in the driver's seat being informed, just like you would want to know if you're pre-diabetic. You would want to know if you're pre-hypertensive. You would want to know if your knee is on its way out, Jacob, as a catcher. You would want the doctor to say, hey, you're good now, but your cartilage is about almost getting ready to wear down. You would want to know this. So you might say, you know what? It's worth it for me to change this in the gym. I mean, I got to catch, but I think I'm going to stop doing this exercise in the gym. Or maybe I'm going to ride a bike instead of running. You've got to be in the driver's seat. This connection needs to be made. I don't think people and coaches and pitchers out there know. I've mentioned three. I have a list in front of me of about 16 things that are correlated to injuries, that are pitching motion flaws, that are scientific. I don't think the world knows that we know what you're doing that can cause. I mean, science has shown this. They don't know how to connect it to what caused it. Just like this article said, left hip range of motion deficit causes medial elbow pain. Is correlated to medial elbow pain. I'm the one that had to connect the dots on, well, what does that mean? Why would that left hip not have good range of motion? Oh, because I know that when a pitcher crosses over, he's not rotating. He can't rotate his upper body correctly because his arm has to get ahead of his hips. So I'm the one making those connections. But the world, I don't think, knows about this. And that's why my last human reaction to that show was inspired. Like, okay, I'm going to educate the world. Guess what? There's a way to prevent injuries. There's a way to know if you're even setting yourself up for one. So, coaches, pitchers, please know that there is a way for you to deal with this on a personal level and that there are solutions. And my last recommendation is, since everybody's concerned about injuries, and I had a youth coach call me this week and he says, what are we going to do with all these injuries? And he was asking me about my programs and different things that they could do to warm up and make sure they're staying safe. People are worried about this. If you are a promising pitcher, have your mechanics looked at, not just biomechanics, but somebody who can look at you qualitatively to say, okay, here's why you're missing, or here's what's going on, or here's what's happening, here's what's going on, here's what you're doing, give you solutions, create something for you, at least get somebody to look at your mechanics so that you get in the driver's seat of what you're doing. It doesn't mean that the end is near or that you're going to have any kind of a diagnosis where you have to give up pitching. This is a thing that you can do. I guess it's like going to the dentist or going and having a physical. You should have your mechanics analyzed, especially if you have an injury or soreness, and make sure you go to somebody who isn't just saying, this is what you're doing wrong. Find a coach that can say, this is where your elbow is in stress. This over here is why it's in stress. This motion here. And by the way, I've said this before, most errors happen before the front leg is even landed. That's usually creating the rest of the motion. So you should have somebody that can look at that and make that connection instead of wondering, are you going to be okay? Don't be the pitcher Jacob talked about, where he's ignoring pain, doesn't know why, and then eventually gets on the mound and can't finish the game. Because the body always wins. If it's whispering in pain, it's going to end up in a serious injury or shutting you down. And shutting down and resting isn't going to do any good unless you go back different. You got to throw differently. You can't rehab an injury in the way that you sustain the injury. And that's what I see happening in the major leagues. And I think that it's a call to action for every pitcher and coach out there to start considering and knowing that this is not an abstract situation as I think they're trying to make it sound like this is abstract. It's concrete. A pitcher gets injured because there's something he's doing. Because pitchers who do it right do not get injured. And there's the proof is in the pudding. So don't fall for it. Did you have any other thoughts on the article or the show rather?
No, I think I got everything I needed to say out of the way, and I think you did a great job telling your part and just proving what you think and what you know is right.
Yeah, that's best thing I can say. I went from being completely shocked to being completely inspired, and knowing that there is another side to this problem. And I really want people to know that because it's really scary to think that pitchers are at risk and there's nobody there helping them right now.
Mm-hmm.
And pitchers are people.
Definitely. They need help.
Exactly. Exactly. So anyway, Jacob, it was so great having you. And listen, everyone, Jacob and I are thinking about doing a podcast showing some of these things we talked about so that you can learn more about some of the flaws you want to watch out for. And if you are suffering from elbow problems and you don't understand why or how it's used, I have a book on my website. My website's Angel Borrelli Pitching. The book I'm suggesting is Strength Training the Pitcher's Elbow. When I write a book, you don't get just what the title says. You're going to get more. My strength training book actually talks about all the phases of pitching, and then it breaks it down into all the things the arm muscles do. And then it talks about which arm muscles are dominant in different pitches. And then it gives you workouts, no matter if you're a pro pitcher or a youth. And it tells you what exercises to do, how to put it together. It's really a great book. But if you have any issues going on with your arm, this book can be a resource for you to figure it out. And what you can do is go to my website, scroll down to it, and when you click on the book to buy it, scroll down to the bottom of the page and you'll see a video where the pages actually flip and you'll be able to see what's inside the book, and it's actually very cool. And it's a great book. And there is no other book dedicated to a pitcher's arm. And so I suggest that everybody take a look at it. It's a great investment. So anyway, but Jacob and I are thinking of doing something visual for you to teach you a little bit more about how to protect yourself. So thank you for listening, and we will be talking to you next month.